Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Let's crack on with today's first story. And the story is titled, Would I Be the A-Hole for Giving My Old Cello to a Fellow Student in Need and Not My Niece-in-Law? I've 36 male, been learning the cello for 8 years and attending the same music school since starting. I started learning late in life because I grew up in a poor family that couldn't afford things like instruments and music lessons. I met Chloe while we're both waiting to go into our lessons a few years back. We speak often about random stuff on the regular because our lessons have always fallen into the same time slot and we're both in the orchestra, etc. She's about 13, very polite and eager to learn, and treats her very cheap, rubbish instrument that her parents got her from an online store like gold. I know her parents, they're lovely people. It's all they can afford. I'm not shaming them, but if you know anything about instruments, you know what I mean. It's also only half the size and far too small for her, but there's not a single scratch on it, and she practices every spare minute. I've recently upgraded to a performer instrument, and a trade-in on my $9,000 cello would have gotten me only $4K back, so I decided to keep it and sell it myself. I'm pretty well off now, but I know what it's like to be where Chloe is, so I've taken pity, with a question mark, on her. I usually give her something at Christmas, like her next grade of music book, rosin, and a gift card from the local luthier, to get a new bow and have her instruments serviced, but having not had time to list my old cello for sale or even know where to, my good deed strings got plucked at thinking that my old instrument would likely mean the world to someone like Chloe, whose parents would never afford a decent instrument for her. But stupid me mentioned this idea to my sister-in-law Gail, who has a daughter, 14 female, we call her Alice. And she told me that Alice wants to learn the cello and insisted that I give the instrument to her daughter instead, as it's too valuable to give to a stranger's kid. Alice is her own little dude and we get along quite well, but she never mentioned wanting to learn an instrument to me until she watched Wednesday, and now it's cool all of a sudden. Alice hasn't stuck with anything for long. She follows fads and jumps from one thing to another and is, for a lack of a better word, spoiled, and based on a track record, handing her anything other than a student cello as her first instrument would be a waste, and I'm unable to convince myself that she would even practice, let alone reach a point that would call for this level of instrument. Where Chloe is at a point where yes, this instrument is slightly too big for her right now, but she needs it. And call me what you'd like for this part, but I feel happier about giving it away to someone that needs it like Chloe, rather than someone that just wants it but is connected to me, you know. But that has me worried that I might be seen as an a-hole on this decision. Family first? The music school is putting on Christmas carols tonight, and I intend to gift the cello to Chloe at the end, but I'm still conflicted about it. And personally myself, I don't blame you for wanting to give that to Chloe rather than Alice in this situation. You know, there's a chance that you may give this to Alice and she may take it on and make use of it, but there's also the real possibility that she's going to take this very expensive cello and then it's just going to gather dust in the cupboard or something like that, which would be a real shame because someone like Chloe, who's definitely going to use it, wouldn't be able to. And one of my thoughts on this one is that, you know, it doesn't sound like Alice is being particularly entitled in this one. It sounds like it's the sister-in-law Gail more than anything. And it sounds like you do get along with Alice. So maybe if you've got any old practice ones or something like that, maybe you could teach her a couple of things and see if it's something she could get into. But then again, I know cellos, I had a quick Google a minute ago, and they're very expensive items, even at the lower end. I just think it'd be a nice thing for you and your family if you was able to get her into the music as well. But no, you would not be the a-hole to me if you passed this on to Chloe rather than Alice. I think it would be the absolute smart thing to do in this situation, if that's what you wanted to do. But Iola says, not the a-hole. You want that cello to be used, played and loved, and Chloe will do that. I ended up giving my daughter's old harp to a little girl who was learning. Sure, I could have sold it, but I'd rather someone use it who wouldn't get the chance to otherwise. Tangerine Bouquet says, not the a-hole. It's yours and you can do with it what you wish. If you are well off and a student cello is within your Christmas budget, give Alice an instrument appropriate for her. Your sister-in-law is the only a-hole here, but next time keep your mouth shut about these things and you'll avoid the problem entirely. OP says, I've thrown the idea at my partner about getting Alice the student cello just to keep the peace, and yes, I usually know better than to tell Gail things like this. It was a slip of the tongue and won't happen again. Lol. Polar Ted says, I'd never demand that my sibling just give my kid a $9,000 cello. It's yours, you paid for it, so give it to Chloe. Better than giving it to someone who may not enjoy it and have it collect dust in the corner of their room like my daughter's cello. SB says, not the a-hole, and you're going to make someone's Christmas very, very special. That cello would mean the world for her and her family, as opposed to it gathering dust in a few months' time. Go for it and make that little girl's world a lot brighter, as someday she might turn out to be one of the best performers in the world, and your cello would always be that special thing she would hold on to. It would be her inspiration, and I'm sure it would be spotless and put to good use. Your sister-in-law has a mentality that it has to stay in the family, and someday it will probably get sold, then being put to good use. If her daughter wants to use the cello, she can always start with something cheaper, and unless one is dedicated and really into it, it would be a waste for something you consider valuable. Trust me, the look on Chloe's face will be priceless when you gift her the cello, and it's worth every fight you may have to get into for the rest of your life regarding this. Look forward to an update as to how it went. Have a Merry Christmas. And there was one more comment that OP put that says, pity was a terrible word to pick, to be honest. I just couldn't think of the word I'd have preferred. Relate is what I mean, but I couldn't think of it. I can relate to Chloe's position from my own experience in being from a poor background. The word count didn't allow me to be more descriptive, and I had to chop a lot of what I described of their family. I didn't mean to come off as thinking of them as beneath me in any way. I just see a lot of my own upbringing in them, and it doesn't bring back terrific feelings. So then OP updates the post and says, wow, so many comments. Thank you to everyone that took the time to help me steady my nerves on this one and point me in what I felt was the right decision from the start, but second guessing myself. I've just gotten home from the carols. Some people mention asking Chloe's parents for permission to gift her the cello. I'm glad this was mentioned because it was something that I hadn't considered, and it led to what I feel was the perfect outcome. Everyone had settled after the students had finished the show, and parents and volunteers brought cakes etc. to share, and everyone was standing around chatting. Chloe ran off to join the line to get her bag of lollies and goodies, and it gave me a moment to approach her folks without having to mention my intentions in front of Chloe before knowing how it would be received by them. I was nervous as hell, but opened with my usual compliments on Chloe's playing. She played What Child Is This in a quartet, and it was perfect. And I made a light-hearted joke about her growing too quickly and dwarfing her cello now. Her parents laughed but went on to mention how they've been saving to buy her a bigger one, and they didn't want to go cheap this time like they had with their first couple, having learned a lot very quickly about the quality. But then when they had taken Chloe to the luthier with the intention of getting her a new one for Christmas, they'd been disappointed to find out that they hadn't saved enough for the quality that Chloe needed, and that they'd been devastated despite Chloe understanding and taking the revelation quite well. Figuring that a new cello was kind of something they'd worked hard on getting for Chloe, I decided to try and get them in on the idea and ask them how much they'd saved and would they be interested in buying my old one, as I had a new one now and had no need for it. But I didn't notice that Chloe had approached back from the line, and she piped up with a low tone that they hadn't even saved enough for the student quality instruments, let alone mine. She has a good idea of how much instruments are worth. I stumbled on my words a little bit, and I went on to insist on knowing how much they'd saved, and her mother told me that they'd saved around $1,600. I told them that that sounded like a good enough offer to me, and I'd be happy to know that it was being played and cherished by someone like Chloe that would take care of it, and I held out my hand to shake on the deal. No one answered for what felt like an hour to me. Chloe's father finally responded and told me that they couldn't accept it, as Chloe had pointed out an instrument of equal value to mine to them while they were in the shop, and he didn't feel it was right to take it for anything but a fair value, and they couldn't afford to do that. I'll admit that I felt a little bit annoyed by his initial good-mannered refusal, but I understood it as I was raised by similar-minded parents with the same values. But I told her parents that it was an offer that I felt that they really couldn't pass up, as it was something that I felt Chloe had earned and needed desperately, and that even if they didn't accept my offer, I was going to give it to Chloe anyway. And I turned and placed the hard case in front of the shocked and dead silent Chloe and walked away. Chloe's father approached me while we were helping to pack up the entertainment hall, and he gave me a hug and thanked me. promising to drop off the money at my shop in the morning and offer to help me out if I ever needed anything. For a stubborn bloke like that to be as red and as teary as he was makes me sure that I did the right thing in making him accept the cello like I did. Chloe was visibly quite emotional, but trying not to show it, but she broke down after mouthing thank you to me as everyone was leaving, and I found it extremely hard to keep my composure and could only manage a smile and a thumbs up in return. I think I'm going to be riding this high for a good while. The best thing is I can tell Gail that I sold it without having to lie, and I can toss up the idea of using the money Chloe's dad pays me for the cello to buy a reasonable second-hand learner's instrument for Alice. Again, thank you for the responses and advice. Then OP gives one more relevant comment and says, wow, this blew up. I wasn't expecting this. I've read a lot of the replies and greatly appreciate the awards and the idea that this put a smile on people's faces. While the idea of getting Chloe's old instrument to give to Alice would be a great idea, the issue with it is that Chloe's cello is only half the size and would be far too small for Alice, who definitely needs a full-size instrument. And according to Chloe's dad, when he popped in today, Chloe was saying that she'd like to keep her old instrument as it is sentimental to her. But he was eventually able to convince her into them trying to sell it because the one that I gave her will need maintenance, services, and to be insured, which I'm in full support of them doing. I've decided to keep the peace with my in-laws as best as I can. I shut my shop up early today and drove a few towns over to pick up a decent second-hand cello for Alice that I spotted on Facebook Marketplace a while back, and that was thankfully still available. It's black, which is her go-to color for everything, so hopefully Alice will appreciate the color more as mine was a polished mahogany red. It needs a service, but it's a good instrument and came with a hard case, a decent bow, rosin, and preliminary grade music books. Sold by parents that purchased it for their son that never picked it up after getting it. Let's hope that's not a sign of its future and that Alice proves me wrong, and I might just end up being the a-hole after all. Gail has a greedy streak in her, yes, but I'm trying to convince myself that she wasn't just seeing dollar signs and hopefully just wanted a good quality instrument for Alice to learn on. She tends to try and not go for bottom of the line in anything when she purchases something for her kids, as she does like to point out stuff's value when she does get something. Yes, she's one of those people, and claims that she isn't aware of how abrupt and rude she is at times. Her real middle name is actually Karen, lol, and we've often joked about it affecting her behavior at times, but she doesn't appear to be learning from it. Thank you again for all the feedback, and I'm glad that I was able to share the good vibes around that I got out of this. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all. Now, there was a part in this where OP said that they might be the a-hole if Alice does pick it up and become, world famous and that sort of stuff. But to me, you would never be the a-hole in this situation. You did an absolute wonderful thing here. In this very moment, that cello means a lot more to Chloe than it is going to Alice. And there was people pointing out, that sister-in-law may have wanted to sell the cello further down the line because it was proven that she knew the value of it, which is a bit of a scary thought as well. There was a little part in the update that had me biting my lip like, oh dear, when he was trying to insist on how much that they had saved. I thought, it made me sort of like shiver a little bit. And then I went pretty much from that to tears because it turned into an absolute wonderful moment. I bet Chloe is going to absolutely cherish that. The father hugging you. Oh, don't get me started. Got that warm fuzzy feeling. But now I'm going to turn it to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What would you have done in that situation? And let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from Good Neighbor TA, who says, am I the a-hole for embarrassing my sister-in-law after she expected me to pay her and her friend's bill? So I, 25 female, went out for dinner for my sister-in-law's 28 female bachelorette party this past weekend. Between my sister-in-law and my husband, 26 male, sister-in-law has always been the golden child of the family. Growing up, my in-laws coddled her and gave her everything that she wanted, while my husband always got the crappy end of the stick. She was always the popular girl in school, cheerleader, lots of friends, all the boys loved her, while my husband was always a little more nerdy and got picked on quite a bit. Even my in-laws would give him a hard time about this and say he needed to be more like his sister. Well, fast forward to today. Both my husband and I went to top schools, got our degrees, and currently have very well-paying jobs in tech. I'm not trying to sound braggy, this is just for context, but we live a very, very comfortable life. Sister-in-law still currently lives at home with my in-laws while they foot all of her bills. She had my niece, 4 female, with her ex and is currently on marriage number 2. This past weekend, I was invited to this fancy upscale restaurant in my city for my sister-in-law's bachelorette party. She just wanted to do a nice dinner. There was 8 of us in total. At the end of the dinner, the bill comes out and the waiter hands it to me. I'm sitting there confused for a second until sister-in-law speaks up and is all, "My parents and I were talking and we're thinking you and my brother can handle the bill for this as a wedding gift since you're not financially contributing to my wedding." Oh dear. I stared at her shocked for a moment and then was like, "And you didn't think to bring this up to me beforehand?" She started going off about how we're so well off, so what's the big deal? And she's sure her brother wouldn't have an issue with it. I asked her why her fiancé doesn't foot the bill, or my in-laws, and where in her right mind she thinks it's okay to spring this on me. She started going on about how we're the wealthiest in both her and her fiancé's family, and that she didn't think I would act like this and would say yes. I told her, "Well, sorry, but I'm not your parents. Don't expect handouts from me." She called me selfish and I called her an entitled brat, paid for my half of the bill and left. Well, as expected, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and even some of the cousins and aunts on my husband's side have been absolutely furious with me and are expecting me to apologize for the comments. I told them over my dead body. Husband is 100% on my side, and we're debating on not going to the wedding. I was talking to my mum and she thinks I took it too far with the comments and should just apologize to keep the peace. Am I the a-hole? Info: the bill was close to $1,000. Hell no, not the a-hole. Can you imagine saying that to someone? "I'm expecting you to pay the bill because you're not contributing to my wedding." Oh my god, that's making me cringe just thinking about it. The absolute entitlement of someone. I gotta say, I wouldn't be going to that wedding at all. I've been on some stag do's in the past where you go and you all pay for the stag, so everyone contributes and puts the money into a pool to pay for the stag's portion of the bill, which is totally understandable. But for her to turn around and expect you to pay for the whole bill, I really can't get over that. That just goes through their head. And I have to wonder, was mother-in-law, aunts and cousins at that table as well? Or have they just been told something else? Because anyone looking into this has got to think, no way are you going to be the a-hole in this situation. But Anonymous Octopus says, not the a-hole. Don't apologize. No matter how much money you make, you are not expected to 1. Contribute to your sister-in-law's wedding. What the hell? 2. Foot the bill for an entire bachelorette party you were attending as a guest. 3. De-escalate her temper tantrum once she didn't get her way. The burden of payment for a bachelorette party usually falls on the maid of honor and bridesmaids, and arranged for ahead of time, or the bride. Edit. And a far more common occurrence is that everyone pays for their own way but chips in for the bride so that she is taken care of. But again, that's settled way ahead of time. Mertzi says, what the actual hell? Because you're not contributing to my wedding. In what world does a sibling contribute to a wedding? She sounds insanely entitled and anyone backing her is delusional. Not the a-hole. Hannah's Flora says, not the a-hole. I guarantee you were only invited as a setup to try and make you pay. Don't go to the wedding, and I'd honestly consider how much contact you want to maintain with sister-in-law and your in-laws moving forward. It's clear they see you two as nothing but an ATM. Warhol says, not the a-hole. The fact of her springing that on you at the end is unconscionable. It'd be one thing, still questionable, if they'd approached you privately beforehand to see if you'd throw a dinner for them. It's another entirely to surprise you at the end of a dinner and expect you to pay for not only her, but 6 of her friends. Even more so that she did it publicly. My guess is she wanted to rely on you, acquiescing to social pressure to do it without a fuss. Also that she expects contribution from you for her wedding. If you were a parent, that's one thing, but as a future sister-in-law, this is so wildly entitled on her part, and on the part of the family who's backing her. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you for spending your time with me today, getting involved in the stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care. and much love.